Trade tensions between China and the European Union ramped up again on Tuesday. Beijing imposed temporary anti-dumping measures on brandy imports from the bloc. The move hits top spirits brands like Hennessy and Remy Martin. It comes after the EU voted last week for tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. That set tariff rates ranging from almost 8% for Tesla to just over 35% for Chinese auto giant SAIC. Brussels has said it is willing to continue negotiating an alternative even after tariffs are imposed. But China has this week decreed the dumping of brandy from the EU threatens China's own sector with substantial damage. Beijing hinted at more to come and said its anti-dumping and anti-subsidy investigation into EU pork products was ongoing. The ministry added it was also considering a hike in tariffs on imports of large engine vehicles. Such levies would hit Germany's producers the hardest. Its exports to China of vehicles with engines of 2.5 litres or larger totaled $1.2 billion last year. Beijing said that as of October 11th, importers of brandy originating in the EU will have to put down security deposits, mostly ranging up to 39%. France was seen as the target of Beijing's brandy probe due to its support of tariffs on China-made EVs. It accounted for 99% of China's brandy imports last year, with shipments reaching $1.7 billion.
Hezbollah rockets struck Israel on Monday, on the first anniversary of the Gaza war. That's as Israel looked poised to expand ground incursions into Lebanon. Iran-backed Hezbollah said it targeted a military base in Israel's city Haifa with a salvo of missiles. The group, allies of Palestinian militant group Hamas, said it also launched another attack on Israeli city Tiberias. This strike, 1 year on from Hamas's October 7th cross-border raid into Israel, underlines how much the Gaza conflict has since spread across the Middle East. There are fears that the US, Israel's superpower ally, and Iran will be sucked in. In this latest attack, Israel's military said 5 rockets were launched from Lebanon at Haifa and that 15 were fired at Tiberias, with some shot down. Hamas, meanwhile, targeted Israel's commercial capital, Tel Aviv, with a missile salvo, the group said. This barrage comes following a series of deadly blows against Hezbollah in Lebanon in recent weeks. Mohammed Kanso is one of 1.2 million people displaced in Lebanon while fleeing Israeli attack. He says this war has been imposed on his country and that he did not expect to be living on the streets. Israel accuses Hezbollah of deliberately embedding its command centres and weaponry beneath residential buildings in the heart of Beirut. Hezbollah denies storing weapons among civilians. On Sunday night, Israeli missiles rained down across the Lebanese capital. Many fear Israel will unleash on Lebanon the same scale of destruction it waged on Gaza.
Floridians raced to fill sandbags on Monday in preparation for Hurricane Milton, as the second major storm in 2 weeks barreled toward Tampa. Milton strengthened to a Category 5 storm on Monday and could produce life-threatening storm surge in some spots along the Florida coast.
Please, if you're in the Tampa Bay area, you need to evacuate. If they have called for your evacuation order, I beg you, I implore you to evacuate.
Local officials ordered evacuations for parts of several counties, with more expected. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said the back-to-back storms posed a serious threat to an already hard-hit state.
We had a lot of debris left from Hurricane Helene on Florida's Gulf Coast. That creates a huge hazard if you have a major hurricane hit in that area this week.
Hurricane Helene was a Category 4 storm when it slammed into Florida on September 26th. It killed more than 200 people across 6 states in the U.S. Southeast. The National Hurricane Center said Milton is expected to make landfall late on Wednesday as a Category 3 storm and then cut across the Florida Peninsula into the Atlantic.
It left former boss Sam Bankman-Fried facing 25 years in jail. Now the collapse of cryptocurrency exchange FTX has reached perhaps its final chapter. On Monday, a Delaware court approved its bankruptcy plan. That should clear the way for billions of dollars to be repaid to customers. The company says it hopes to repay 98% of them within 60 days of the plan taking effect. It says it will have up to $16.5 billion available to make the payments, or more than enough to cover all claims. US watchdogs have allowed the firm to prioritize repayments over fines and tax debts. Once among the world's top crypto exchanges, FTX collapsed after news that Bankman-Fried had used billions of dollars in customer money to pay off risky bets made by his hedge fund, Alameda Research. He is currently appealing the conviction. On Monday, FTX said the ruling was a victory for creditors, made possible by the recovery of assets that went missing during its chaotic collapse. It's also generated cash selling stakes it acquired in tech companies, including Amazon-backed AI startup Anthropic. However, lawyers for some creditors dispute the claim they are being repaid in full. They argue that's based on the low value of Bitcoin at the time FTX collapsed in late 2022, and doesn't reflect how it's soared in value since.
It this year? No. But it's a lovely thing.
Gary Ruvkun was at his home in Newton, Massachusetts when he got the call, informing him that he was one of 2 American scientists who won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Medicine.
If you get a call from somebody in Sweden, answer it.
Co-winner Victor Ambros said he was informed by his son, who received the call from the Nobel Committee by mistake. The pair won for their discovery of microRNA and its crucial role in how multicellular organisms grow and live. Vice Chair of the Nobel Committee for Physiology, Olli Kämpe, described the discovery's significance.
MicroRNAs are important for our understanding of embryological development, normal cell physiology, and diseases such as cancer.
Their work helped explain how cells specialize and develop into different types, such as muscle and nerve cells.
I want to shout out to the world that this is really important. All these things are important.
Ambros is a professor at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, while Ruvkun is a professor at Harvard Medical School and also affiliated with Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston.
These displaced Haitians are awaiting food handouts after being driven from their homes by gang violence. Members of the Grand Griffe gang stormed through their town of Pont-Sunday last week, killing at least 70 people and forcing over 6,000 residents to flee with few belongings. Many of them came to the nearby city of St. Mark. I lost many, many relatives, says this woman displaced by the gang attack. Nieces, cousins, aunts, uncles, they're all dead. They were buried without a funeral. The massacre on Thursday was one of the deadliest gang attacks the Caribbean nation has seen in recent years. The St. Nicholas Hospital in St. Mark treated some of the victims. One of them is T'Charleth Charles, who says he narrowly escaped death.
As the gang member approached me, he didn't point the barrel at me. The gun was facing the ground. I believe in God. I prayed as he tried to fire. It didn't work.
Grand Griffe gang leader Luxon Elan took responsibility for the massacre, saying it was in retaliation for civilians remaining passive, while police and vigilante groups killed his soldiers. Haitian gangs outgun and outnumber the national police force, and they've grown in power as the government has weakened. Promised international support still lags, and nearby nations have deported migrants back to the country. On Monday, the head of a rotating presidency that is running the country said he would not ratify the handover to the man in line to take over from him, citing unresolved corruption accusations against 3 other council members. The break creates fresh uncertainty in the aftermath of the massacre. The council was formed to replace the government of former Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who was forced to step down amid gang conflicts that have killed thousands and forced over 700,000 people from their homes.
This unlicensed gold mine in Ghana is a booming business. It's one of many in the country generating livelihoods and informal revenue streams, even as it harms miners' health, pollutes waterways, and fuels crime. Known in Ghana as Galamsey, Unlicensed gold mining has grown at a breakneck pace this year as global gold prices have risen by almost 30%. Small-scale mines produced 1.2 million ounces of gold in the first 7 months of this year. That's more than in the whole of 2023, according to Ghana's industry regulator. About 40% of the country's total gold output comes from small mines, and up to 80% of them are unlicensed.
So it's an industry that is very informal and it makes it easy for organised crime to get involved.
That's Chris Aston, who heads up a British-backed program aimed at regulating Ghana's small-scale gold mining. He says organised crime gangs ensnare miners by giving them funding for equipment up front, unlike other lenders. The mine's remote locations also play a part.
There's less government there, there's less government oversight, there's less patrols. So the location of the mines is convenient for organised crime groups.
The dangers of Galamsey extend beyond gangs. At this wildcat mine, many wear no professional protective equipment. Dozens of miners have been killed in collapsing pits in recent years, according to news reports and rights groups. Medical centres have reported high numbers of early deaths from pulmonary diseases. That's in both miners and those who live near mines. Causes include inhaling dust that contains lead or poisonous fumes from the mercury and nitric acid that miners use to leach gold out of sediment. Mining has also led to some 65% of Ghana's water sources being polluted, according to the Water Authority. Monitoring platform Global Forest Watch says vast areas of cocoa plantations and virgin forest have been destroyed. President Nana Akufo-Addo came to power in 2017 with pledges to take action on the issue. He has since launched crackdowns and arrested illegal miners. But in recent weeks, protesters have taken to the streets in Accra, accusing the government of failing to tackle the problem.
All our water bodies are polluted. For how long do you have to sit and be looking at all these politicians doing us like this? No, we can't. They say water is life. When water is life and our water bodies has been polluted, how can we live long? So what we are saying is that stop Galamsey, because we want to live long.
Opinion polls show Galamsey is a top issue for voters ahead of the country's December 7 general election. Successive governments have been promising for years to tackle the problem without making much headway. Industry experts say it's partly because powerful people are benefiting from the industry. That includes some politicians and traditional rulers taking a cut from Galamsey profits. Ghana's information minister did not respond to requests for comments on the organised crime and corruption allegations.
Plenty risk there is high.
In the meantime, men like this miner will continue in the muddy business. Having come from nothing to making thousands of dollars through Galamsey, he says he's now also brought friends in to dig for the precious ore.
This has been Bolivia's worst ever fire season. That's according to new figures released on Monday from an NGO called Tierra Foundation. They show wildfires have scorched about 25 million acres this year, mostly in the country's tropical east. That's an area roughly the same size as Iceland or Cuba, equivalent to nearly 19 million American football fields. There have been over 82,000 active fire outbreaks in Bolivia this year, up until October 6th, according to data from Brazil's INPE space agency. One of the NGO's researchers said the fires are a disaster of an unprecedented magnitude in the country. Last week, Bolivia's government declared a national disaster.
Que es el de Declaratoria de Desastres Nacionales.
The hardest hit area is Santa Cruz. Around 17 million acres have burned in the wealthy farming region in the country's eastern lowlands near Brazil. Scientists say that while most fires are set by humans, recent hot and dry conditions from fossil fuel-driven climate change are helping fires spread more quickly. They've also been exacerbated by drought and land clearances linked to booming cattle and grain production. South America has been hit by a series of heat waves since last year.
U.S. stocks closed lower Monday while Treasury yields rose as traders lowered bets for another 0.5 percentage point interest rate cut from the Federal Reserve. Meanwhile, worries over an escalation of the conflict in the Middle East also weighed on markets. The Dow and S&P 500 dropped nearly 1% each, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq fell a little more than that. Further dampening sentiment was Google parent Alphabet, whose shares slipped more than 2%, after a U.S. judge ordered the tech giant to overhaul its mobile app business to give Android phone users more options. And Amazon stock declined 3% after Wells Fargo cut its rating to equal weight from overweight. But Prime Capital Financial's Director of Investments, Will McGough, remains upbeat on stocks through the end of 2024.
With regards to the outlook for the rest of the year, I would still say optimism is the best case and probably the base case here. Typically during election years, you see a little bit more volatility heading into Q4. We got that, but markets are still very close to all-time highs, which is extremely bullish. Markets are actually up 8 of 9 months this year, which again is bullish. We're looking at 20% gains year to date, 34% over the past year, which is bullish. And I'm saying the word bullish a lot, which means you got to stick with the trend.
Goldman Sachs also is positive on the market. The investment bank raised its 2024 year-end S&P 500 target to 6,000 from 5,600 and lowered its odds of a U.S. recession to 15% from 20%. One other stock move of note, Pfizer, which added 2% after a report that activist investor Starboard Value has taken a roughly $1 billion stake in the drug maker.
Samsung Electronics had an apology for investors on Tuesday. The tech giant announced that its third quarter profit would be lower than expected. It said sorry for falling behind rivals in providing high-end chips to NVIDIA in the booming AI market. The South Korean firm said delays with a major AI chip customer and increased competition from Chinese chip makers led to a drop in its semiconductor earnings. It all highlights the challenges for Samsung, which faces increasing rivalry in both regular and advanced silicon. The world's largest maker of memory chips, smartphones, and TVs estimated a profit of just under $6.8 billion for the 3 months till the end of September, well below expectations. One analyst said that the numbers were a shock and looked unlikely to improve soon. Samsung's slow entry into the AI chip market has made it more reliant on lower-margin chips, increasing its vulnerability to Chinese competition and waning demand for smartphones and PCs. High-margin AI server chips are helping the chip market recover, but Samsung is lagging local rival SK Hynix in supplying such products to NVIDIA. Samsung shares are down over 20% this year and dropped another 1% or so following Tuesday's news.
Shares of Pfizer rose as much as 4% in Monday morning trading after activist investor Starboard Value took about a $1 billion stake in the pharmaceutical giant. Sources told Reuters that Starboard wants the drug company to make changes to turn its performance around. They also said Starboard has approached a former CEO and CFO of Pfizer to help, and both have expressed interest. Pfizer declined to comment, and Starboard did not immediately respond to a Reuters request for comment. Shares of Pfizer have fallen more than 13% in the past year and traded around half their pandemic-era highs, as sales of its COVID products have shrunk. Wall Street analysts said there was no quick fix by an activist investor to solve Pfizer's many problems. It had a weaker-than-hoped launch of its RSV vaccine, and clinical data from an obesity pill it was developing has been disappointing. Starboard has previously purchased stakes in other big companies, having pushed for changes at News Corp, Salesforce, and Tinder-owned Match.
I lost my life. I lost my job. I lost everything. I was a daughter, a mother, a nan, and all that went.
A stroke 4 years ago left Lisa Vincent's left arm immobile and rigid, but the 52-year-old patient is one of the first to test a novel rehabilitation device that's helping her regain the movement she lost.
It's just amazing, and I don't want to cry, but it makes you want to cry because you know you can do it. It's just positivity all the way now.
Vincent and 3 other patients from a stroke support group in London have been working with researchers from Newbond, a spin-out from Imperial College London, for about 2 months. The prototype wearable tech is strapped around the forearm. It's embedded with electrodes that detect muscle activation and stimulators that activate the patient's nerves, which, as Newbond's co-founder Junpei Kashiwakura explains, helps rewire the patient's brain to the limb.
2, 1, and relax. The connection between the motor command from the brain and the sensory feedback from the limb is very important. This tight coupling gonna promote the neuroplasticity, which is the reorganization of the brain, and gonna give him the pathway to have the recovery of the movement of the arm.
After just 8 sessions with the device, Lisa Vincent's left arm has gone from completely rigid to being able to bend and flex with much more control.
My granddaughter, she's 8 months old, and she was only allowed to sit on my lap because I couldn't hold her. And 3 weeks ago, my daughter put her on my lap and I held her with this arm because I felt in control of the wrist and I was confident enough. And I cried myself to sleep that night. It was amazing that I could do that eventually. And that's a memory I'll keep for a long time because of you guys.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Co-founder and CEO Patrick Sagastegi hopes once certified, the device can be used anywhere and integrated into daily routines.
The initial phase will be to collaborate with private clinics, so in order to evaluate how well the device works with the patients, and then learn how the clinicians use this device to then be able to learn these things and apply it in the home settings.
The early results are promising, but a larger trial will begin next year at a London hospital to validate the device's effectiveness.
The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has today decided to award the 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics to John Hopfield, Princeton University, USA, and Geoffrey Hinton, University of Toronto, Canada, for foundational discoveries and inventions that enable machine learning with artificial neural networks.
أقول لكم إمكاناتنا بخير، مقاومون على الجبهة، متماسكين، والإدارة متماسكة، وإدارة الحزب والمقاومة منتظمة بدقة وبحسب ما هو معمول به في حزب الله، وقد تخطينا الضربات الموجعة التي أصابتنا.